Welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Development Control Committee.
Hi, David.
Which is due to the government's advice to maintain the practice of social distancing, will be held virtually. Each meeting has been recorded and will be available via the council's website to be viewed as soon as practical following the meeting. Anyone participating in this meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please, could everyone ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode? Members will receive an electronic copy of this agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the council's website. Members and officers and any public speakers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch off their cameras at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times, keep your cameras and microphones switched off. And this will help to minimize any background noise and interference, and to ensure the connection remains stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or a question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams windows, and I will come to you in order I will receive the request. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Please lower your hand once you've finished speaking. That chat button has been disabled for this meeting. In the event that the committee requires to vote on item of business before it, at the meeting, the Democratic Service Officer will ask you in turn to announce your vote, either for, against, or abstain. I will then ask the committee's legal officer to announce the decision by the committee following this process. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting this meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary, mute those not being used. Before we commence, I will now ask the officer from the Democratic Services to announce the councillors in attendance at this meeting. I would also ask officers and any public speakers to introduce themselves as and when invited to do so during the course of this meeting. They should ensure microphones or cameras are switched off when not in use. Mike, please, announce who's here today.
Thank you, Chair. For the purpose of the recording, I'm Mike Pittman, Democratic Services Officer Committees. Members in attendance today are Councillor Altaf Hussain, Councillor Keith Edwards, Councillor Gary Thomas, yourself as Chairperson, Councillor John Paul Blundell, Councillor Ken Watts, Councillor Matthew Voisey, Councillor Mike Kern, Councillor Nora Clark, Councillor Richard Collins, and Councillor Ros Sturman. And that's everyone, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Right. Number 7 on the agenda. Oh, apologies. I got to take, sorry, apologies. Colin Webster, Richard Granville, John Spanswick, Richard Young. Anybody else, please?
Yes, Councillor Sorrel Dendy, Chair.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor Sadie Vidal as well, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Item 7, land at Broadlands House, Broadlands. Lee, when you're ready, please. Or Councillor Ros Sturman, you're going to leave?
Yes, that's right. As I said before, at 4:30. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry,
Chair,
Lee.
I thought. Sorry, Chair. I thought. Sorry, Lee. Chair, I thought we were going to do the speakers first. So, agenda item 10, I think it was.
You were quite right.
Yeah, Chair, as well. Can we take any declarations of interest, please, before you take an item?
Anyone? Right, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I have got my little hand up. I don't know if you can see.
John Paul, please. And Nora
Thank
Clark
you.
after.
Thank you, Chair. It's just 2 declarations of interest today. Agenda item 7, land at Broadlands House, Broadlands. That's a personal interest, as I'm on the community council there although I took no part in the planning discussion. And agenda item 10, again, I am on the Community Council who did object to this, although I took no part in the planning application discussion. I will though mention that in the correspondence Councillor Smith sent to the officer, Hayley Kemp, I was CC'd in them, but I think as the officer can attest to, I didn't actually reply to any of them. But I was CC'd in them. I believe that's a personal interest as well. Thank you.
I bring the legal object, Rod.
Yeah, I think there's no issues with that, Chair. Councillor Blundell's declaration is in order.
Thank you very much. All right, John Paul. Nora, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a personal interest in item 12 as a member of Porthcawl Town Council, but take no part in the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Item 10, please. We've got two public speakers.
Yeah. So, sorry, Chair, to interrupt you. Yeah, two speakers to be called first on this.
Right. Councillor Charles Smith first, please. Hang on a sec. Altaf, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is with regards to item 8, land of All Saints Way, Penaway. As you know, I'm the community councillor as well as elected councillor of Penaway Ward, and I know the resident as a councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Thank you. Right. When we're ready, Anne. Charles, you can kick off first, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members, I'm here in my capacity as the ward member who represents this part of Kevin-Glass, and I'm here at the request of neighbours of number 20 Shakespeare Avenue who have serious concerns about this application. These concerns are not based on speculation about what might happen in the future. These concerns are based on their experience of what has already happened at this address previously, when a very similar business enterprise was operated without planning permission. DCBC Social Services have told me they are not involved in the current application. However, South Wales Police do have incident numbers of serious complaints about antisocial behaviour concerning a care home business at this address. I hope members of this committee will question officers about the previous activity that took place here without planning permission. Please consider whether it's adequately explained in the report. The neighbours of number 20 Shakespeare Avenue assure me that they have every sympathy with any young vulnerable person who needs one-to-one care of this sort. This is what's known as care in the community. But for care in the community to work, the community should be involved. Kevin-Glass is not a gated community. It is an inclusive neighbourhood. I've lived in Kevin-Glass since 1976, and living in Kevin-Glass is all about rubbing along with a wide and diverse bunch of neighbours. So it would have been good if Mr. and Mrs. Hurd, the owners of the property, or their agent, Mr. Matthews, had taken the trouble to knock on doors and talk to people about their ideas and their business model for number 20 Shakespeare Avenue, but they haven't. As it stands, neighbours have to rely on the evidence of their own experience with this address, experience of severe disruption and threatening behaviour, which took place with no planning permission, apparently no oversight from the Care Commission for Wales, and sad to say, no effective help from anyone, including the paid carers or the police. Members, you are asked this afternoon to buy a pig in a poke. I suggest that to make an informed decision, you need a lot more information than is provided in the report on your desk today. You need information about why this facility is needed, who it's for, and why it's here at this address. You need further observations from the owners, social services, education, the regulator, and the community. I invite you please to consider deferring this decision today for a month at least, so that you can have this further information. Without this further information, there's no guarantee that there'll be any real consultation, no clear commitments to supervision, regulation or accountability. Without that, you'll ask to vote for a business project that is doomed to fail. It'll fail its owners, it'll fail the community, and it'll fail the young client himself or herself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Charles. Right. We'll have the next speaker, please. Mr. Cassell, please. Can you bring him in, Mark?
He's in chair, I think.
Yeah, he's in, Chair. He's muted. I'm not sure if you can hear
He
us.
must be muted. He's not on camera either.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, there we
We
go.
can't see you.
Yes, it's if you speak, you see the countdown clock, Mr. Cassell. If you start
Yes,
to
I see it,
speak,
right. I'm
When you're ready,
speaking on
please.
behalf of the residents, of which 12 so far out of 20 are opposing the Hearns application. Our objections are based on our previous experience 3 to 4 years ago, when the property was let to on an unofficial basis in the way now being proposed. At that time, we experienced severe antisocial behaviour from the children by way of noise, i.e. shouting, screaming, swearing, loud music throughout the day and night. Additionally, we suffered verbal abuse, intimidation, racism, unreasonable annoyance, unwarranted tour of nuisance, as well as other unacceptable behaviour, including drug taking, alcohol drinking, graffiti and litter dropping, and were left in constant fear of other potential crimes. Our lives were recklessly torn apart by the inconsiderate behaviour and actions of the children placed at this property. The care inspector has no idea what we've all witnessed and been put through. This is not acceptable for us to experience again, surely. Surely, after bringing up our own children, we deserve a duty of care from the local council to continue living in a calm and peaceful environment to which we all expect and need to live. South Wales Police are well aware of the many incidents that took place 3 to 4 years ago, and they were called constantly, day and night, on a regular basis, and attending with blue flashing lights and sirens at all hours. The residents of the adjoining premises were also left a logbook to record all the incidents. Regarding the canvassing of the neighbours by the Hearns, this never took place. It might have at Litchard. On the council side, no planning could have existed, as no canvassing or consultation ever took place. This should have been a consideration of the Hearns. Additionally, 3 to 4 years ago, Hearns put up other children in the property and got around the local authority permissions by bringing in children from outside the area without the knowledge of Bridgend County Borough Council. Finally, regarding the quality of care staff, when events occurred, they would sit outside and lock themselves in their vehicles, either until the police arrived or the situation calmed down. And we were informed by the staff that everything was under control, yet the children were totally uncontrollable, which is totally unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cassells. Lee, please.
Oh, it's me, Chair. It's my application.
I'll go long one now. Number 7, I'm going back to it. Thank you, Bailey, please.
Okay. For the purpose of the recording, I am Hayley Kemp, the Principal Planning Officer. Good afternoon, members. The application seeks full planning permission for the change of use from a dwelling house to a residential care home for one child at 20 Shakespeare Avenue, Kevin-Glass. The application is for the residential care of one child under 18 years of age and who is classified as vulnerable. The use will be subject to registration by the Care Inspectorate of Wales, and the child will be in full-time care with a fully trained carer looking after him or her throughout the day and night, except when they're in school. Each carer will work to 12-hour shifts, with daily shift changeover times taking place at 7 AM and 7 PM. The child in care is classified as vulnerable as they come from a difficult background or home circumstance. While some may have learning difficulties, they are victim of circumstance and are simply in need of proper care and attention. The property is a 2-storey semi-detached dwelling house that is currently served by 2 off-street parking spaces and a garage. No external or internal alterations are proposed to the building. Concerns were raised by the local ward member, community council and local residents to the proposal regarding the impact of noise and antisocial behaviour on the existing amenities of the neighbouring properties as a result of this development. Concerns were also raised regarding a use of this nature in a residential area and the experiences of residents being revisited due to the use of the property for a similar use previously. In response to the previous experiences of the neighbours regarding the use of this property as a care home, members are advised that there is no planning history for such a use of this property, and previously the use of the property was not registered with the Care Inspectorate of Wales, who regulate and monitor the use of the property as a care home. With regard to the use of the property for the care of one child and two carers in a residential area, it is considered that the overall character of the property would remain the same, and the use would display similar features associated with a family dwelling house, resulting in little harm or significant erosion to the character and appearance of the existing area. With regard to the impact on amenities and neighbouring residents in terms of noise and disturbance, as previously stated, the home will accommodate one child under the age of 18 and will be registered with the Care Inspectorate of Wales. There will be a fully trained carer looking after the child day and night, working 12-hour shifts. The handover times are considered to take place when people are leaving or returning from work to minimise any further disruption to nearby residents. A planning condition has also been attached to the consent, limiting the number of children at the home to one child, again to reduce any impact on the amenities of the neighbours. Members are advised that whilst previously the local planning authority would issue a temporary consent for such uses in a residential area, a recent appeal decision for a similar type of development subject to this application in Litchard against a condition for temporary planning permission was allowed, stating that the reason for granting a temporary consent should never be that a time limit is necessary because of the effects of the development on the amenity of an area. Therefore, the inspector found the temporary consent condition and condition regarding the keeping of an up-to-date register for visitors to the property unreasonable and unnecessary. The inspector also concluded that the removal of these conditions would not result in any harm to the general amenities of the area or the amenities of nearby residents. And a full copy of that appeal decision has been attached as Appendix 1 to this report. Therefore, taking into consideration the inspector's decision, the relatively small-scale nature of the use, and the same level of movement and activity from the property compared to a dwelling house, the proposed use as a child's care home for the care of one child under the age of 18 is not considered to have a significant adverse impact on the amenities of the neighbouring properties. With regard to antisocial behaviour, the proposed use will be regulated and monitored by the governing body, the Care Inspectorate for Wales, and no evidence has been submitted to demonstrate that a child living at this care home would create disturbances or cause an increase in any other form of antisocial behaviour. Also, there are no highway safety concerns associated with this proposal, and therefore the application is recommended for approval subject to compliance with the condition contained within the agenda pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bailey. Could I move on and second that, please? John Paul?
Move.
Got a second that, please? Rod?
Is there a second, Chair? I haven't heard one.
Second, Chair. Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Edwards is
Thank you very
second. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right. John Paul, you want to speak as well, please?
Yeah, just I have a couple of questions, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you.
Just lower my little hand before I forget. We go back to this question of perception of fear and this how broad a concept that is. And we've had this discussion numerous times and people said we need the documentation to go along with the perception of fear. The documentation is there from a previous experience. The residents aren't ones to exaggerate their claims from what I've seen. I have, what again do we talk about? Why is perception of fear still a question if when the documentation is there, it's not being looked at? That's my main question, please, Chair. And if I can I come back after?
Thank you, John Paul. Of course you can come back. Will I get any more questions, please? Ailey, can we bring Jonathan, or are you going to answer
Yes.
this, please?
No, I can answer to a certain extent, to maybe
Sorry,
John.
Chair, I did put my hand up.
Right, me bring Councillor Bosey, please.
Thank you. I was quite interested to read this application because it's very similar to an application in my own ward that I think it was last month or maybe the month before, which was approved because of the planning inspector's comments. I feel very aggrieved that these planning inspectors have, basically no regard for the local population that live, the residents, the neighbours, and it's wrong. But saying that, unfortunately, until the powers that they work to are changed, we are where we are. Now, in this instance, it's been operating unregulated. The question I have of the officers is, now that it's been going through a proper process through planning, will it also go through a proper process to be regulated and controlled and monitored by the Care Commission and our own local authority, so that hopefully the standards would be that of acceptable to local residents? Because the trouble is, once we've given this permission, it's very easy for them to slip into bad ways, and and unfortunately, looking at it, I don't think we can refuse it because of what has gone in the past elsewhere, and hence my concern that the planning system in this case, as in the other case, is broken because it doesn't listen to the views of the people who are going to be affected by this. But I'd like to hear the officers' comments. Thank you.
Let me bring another one speaker, and thank you, Councillor Boche, please. Councillor Stuman, please.
Sorry, I didn't think you were going to come to me straight away. Yes, basically, I'd like to echo what John Paul has said. On page 74, it says, while the perception and fear of crime can be a material planning consideration, it must be based on sound evidence rather than anecdotal evidence. I would actually argue that they do have, or they have presented sound evidence because they've got written documentation. And I really can't get my head round why planning are actually saying there is no sound evidence. Can I have clarification, please? And thank you.
Jonathan or Aileen, which one's going to come back, please?
If I come back on the perception of fear for Councillor Blundell and Councillor Sturman, then John can answer Councillor Voisey's query, okay?
Thank you very much.
In regard to the perception of fear, with regards to the previous use, no details have been submitted of that previous use. I don't know if it was a care home for one child, 3 children. I don't know the details of that. And with regards to the evidence, no evidence from the neighbours was submitted to me. It's the first I've known about any South Wales police records. None of that was submitted as evidence in the assessment of this application. So I understand the concerns the neighbours have raised, but there was no evidence submitted with the objections of that nature. So all I can say with regards to this application, the assessment's been undertaken for the care of 1 child and 1 child only, as a condition has been put on to ensure that that's the limit of children there. And yes, so that's the condition is there to restrict that, and it also be properly monitored and managed by the Care Inspectorate of Wales governing body, which is a process outside of the planning application process. So I don't know if John wants to add to that.
Wait a second, who just come in then? Mark? Mike, rather. Let me bring you in a second, please, Mike.
Yes, Chair.
You need to mute people is not supposed to be speaking. Somebody just come in there.
Yeah, there was a couple of people with their mics still on, so I've muted them now.
You mute them all, please. Apart myself and somebody speaking and somebody talking was not on.
John, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hayley. For the recording, my name is Jonathan Parsons, the Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. I'm aware that Councillor Blundell has also raised his hand again, so you may wish to come back in. I just reiterate what Hayley says. We've got to also look at this application is got to be considered on its land use planning merits, and that's what we're looking at the moment. And yes, it's been raised that the perception of fear is, in some circumstances, can be a material planning consideration, and I certainly take on board the comments that have been raised by the local member, and with the resident. And I understand from the report we can see that there are a number of concerns that have been raised from residents. So I think we can safely agree that there is concern over the past use of this site. Just to give a little bit of a history lesson, there isn't any sort of planning history pertaining to this particular property. We are dealing with this on its own merit. Just to sort of reiterate that at one time there wasn't a separate use class for this type of use, and any house could be converted into a house of multiple occupation. Up to 6 residents could be living there, and we have had instances within the county borough where that has been the case. So it's quite possible that the previous use was something that didn't actually require planning permission, and it could operate under its normal use class as a dwelling house. In this particular case, things have moved on. There is now a separate use class which includes this type of use. There is a recent High Court decision as well that's relevant to this, which does indicate that children's care homes are subject to this use class. And this particular application is for a single child, and that will be controlled by condition. So it's a single child, 2 carers, and operating on a shift basis. That's what we're currently considering, and we need to look at this on its land use planning merits. The previous appeal in decisions have also indicated that this type of use is one that is tantamount to a residential dwelling house. It's the activities associated with it are no more than what you would expect from a normal residential dwelling. That's clear from planning appeal decisions, not just here, but elsewhere within Wales. And that's the view of the planning inspector. It's not just one planning inspector. There are other planning appeal decisions that are pertinent to this as well. So that's the policy drift that we are looking at the moment. So we need to look at this on its planning merits. However, as correctly raised by Councillor Voisey, there is other legislation, and there are other standards that need to be complied with. But that's not planning's role. Planning's role is not to administer or police any other consents that are required under other legislation. That is a matter for the relevant authorities, and that's the Care Inspectorate for Wales. And I'm not an expert in this, but I would imagine that our own social services team would be involved with any placements that are brought into this premises as well. But that's not a planning matter. That's not for us to dictate, police, or decide on. We've got to look at the land use planning merits, and I think that the officer's report in this case does outline the planning situation. So it'd be for members then to decide on that. I'm quite happy to answer any other questions if they are raised. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you again, Jonathan. I get John Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. I perfectly understand what Jonathan and Hayley are saying about that we should deal with this on the land use merit, and Councillor Voisey is correct that hopefully if this planning application is accepted, that it will be better managed in the future, because it will be registered with Care Inspectorate Wales, which from here listening to members of the public it wasn't previously. On that point, I feel that there's still need for more consultation with the residents. I feel that if Hayley is correct and she didn't receive any of this information from the police, then that's I trust her, and I'm sure she's correct, and I think that information must be out there, and the residents won't bring this up unless it was there. So, Chair, if I may, I'd like to move for a deferral to the next meeting so that more consultation can take place with the residents of Shakespeare Avenue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have I got a second, please?
I welcome to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Voisey. Jonathan, please.
Yeah, if I come back in on that, just to make it clear, what extra consultation is required, because we have complied with the regulations necessary for a planning application. The residents have been consulted, they have come back. I just need to know what this consultation is now expected to do.
John Paul, please.
If I may come back, Chair. Yeah, thank you. In the report, it mentions the number of residents that have come back with disagreements with this objection, sorry, with this application. But the member of the public who said he spoke for 12 of the 20. Now, I don't believe there are 12 houses that have responded to this. So there must be more people, and I believe that if this evidence is there, that the perception of fear, again, it could be material, that all avenues should be explored, and we should make sure that we're making the right decision for both the child that could be living here and the residents as well. So that's why I think we should go out to more consultation, Jonathan.
So yeah, so who would you want us to consult then? Because we've consulted as we've required under the planning legislation. So you want us to? I mean, what more do we want? What more do we do?
It's the residents again. You know, if they've got the evidence, if the evidence is there that they've got police numbers and all that, maybe some of them didn't understand the letter at the time. I don't know. I didn't see the letter. I'm not the local member. You know, so this is what I'm trying to put. But other members do want to come in, so I'll let them speak as well.
Thank you, John Paul. Hang on, Jonathan, please. Councillor Bosey, please, and Councillor Sturman.
Thank you, Chair. I think the purpose of the requesting for a deferral is because if there was evidence of activity to which the police have been called and documentation to support that, to support the fear of crime, then by simply delaying it to the next committee to get that evidence, we are being seen to be fair and open in our dealings with this matter. It may not affect the result, you know, the recommendation, but I think that as there is additional evidence that's been brought to light at this meeting, that you know, I'm not saying that we haven't done the consultation correctly, because I know our officers work to the letter of the law, but in this instance, just for the benefit of doubt and to remove any, well, afterwards we should have had this seen, I think that it would be prudent just to have that evidence presented if the objectors want to give you that information. If they don't, well, then they've had their opportunity. Now they know that that is the evidence that we need to follow to have evidence of fear of crime. You know, in the instance of the previous application, because it was done in advance, there was no evidence of social nuisance and activity. If there clearly is from this, then I think we should bring it forward, look at it, and then we can make a decision, an informed decision. So it's really to give complete transparency to the planning procedure. It may not affect the result, because based on the current information we have to approve. But I think if it's not heard and listened to, then I think we won't be doing ourselves a great service.
Thank you, Councillor Bosey. Meet being Councillor Sturman.
Yes, as I totally agree with what Councillor Bosey has said. Would it also be within our remit to discuss the matter with South Wales Police, I wonder?
Jonathan, please.
No, we're not leading. We are determining the land use planning merits. If any resident or if the local member wishes to submit any further evidence, then that will be taken into consideration. But I'm not having officers consulting with South Wales Police. That's outside scope of our sphere of influence, if you like. But if any evidence is brought to us, then we will certainly consider that.
Thank you. I take your point completely.
Thank you, Councillor Sturman. Councillor Hussain, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I agree with Matthew Wisely. He has very elegantly put it forward what we want, really. And I think it is important to have that evidence if there has been. That's number one. Number two, how do we know that it will not happen again today? What is the planning department doing? Are they putting any CCTVs? Just a thought. And are we able to do a survey in the locality, whether they want it or not? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting the impression that this is just getting out of hand. You know, people have got our members are getting the wrong perspective here. I don't know how many children were at this house in the previous time, but we're talking about one child here and one child only. You know, obviously there were more children there the last time. I think we really do need to get this into perspective. It's going to be monitored by the Care Inspectorate for Wales. Those are the people to take anything up with if anything did happen. They are there to well, look after the child basically. So if anybody's got complaints, and those are the people that you complain to. One child, personally, I don't see anything you know, wrong with this. I don't like the idea of perhaps looking at it as a business in a residential area, but I mean, you know, it's like a family home in a way. They've got two carers looking after one child, and I think we're all getting it out of perspective. I've got to be honest. You know, I'm quite willing to accept the officer's recommendation on this.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, please. Can I bring Rod Legal in, please?
Yes, Chair.
Rod, should we take a vote this for the amendment?
Yes, we can. Just to clear up one matter before we do, Chair. I wanted to let members finish questions, but I've got it down, and I may be wrong, that Councillor Blundell originally moved the motion, which is, of course,
That's
the
it, yeah.
recommendation to approve. So are you
Is it the same
withdrawing
vote
that?
now, or has he changed his mind?
Well, indeed. So are you going to withdraw that first motion, Councillor Blundell?
Sorry, Rod, I didn't move anything. I stayed silent.
Oh, I
I
beg
want
your
to
pardon.
move
I
the-
thought it was from you, Councillor. I beg your pardon.
No,
Because
no,
I got somebody's moved and Councillor Edwards seconded, and I thought it was you. I apologise for that.
no, sorry. I usually do, but move and second them, but not today. No.
Not today. Okay.
Who was the other mover, please? Councillor Edwards. There was another one.
Councillor Edwards definitely a seconder, Chair.
I thought it was Councillor John Pedell.
Well, can we move it now?
Well,
if you wish, yes,
you've
please,
got-
Councillor Clark.
Can we, Rod?
Yeah, if my only issue is to try and get it in order, Chair. But if it hasn't been, if the motion wasn't regularly moved in the first place, in any event, to defer is an amendment.
Yeah.
And I would, you know, you take that first in any event. So
All right,
I
then.
think the right process is that you now put the amendment to the vote.
Right.
And
Chair.
because that has been moved in second.
1 second, please, Altaf, please.
Yeah, I had moved it.
Oh, Councillor Altaf, Hussein.
Yes,
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 yes.
Oh, go on then. Thank you very much. Right, we know where you are now, man. So we're going to take the amendment first, anyway, haven't we?
Take the amendment first, Chair, and I presume on this one there's going to be a need for a proper vote because,
yeah,
you know, of some of the contributions. So if I think, you know, the procedure, if Mike can help on calling out the members' names.
Right.
So the
Mike,
vote would
there,
be.
please.
Sorry,
Yeah,
just to get it clear, the vote would be for deferral, for further information and consultation. And I think Jonathan is now clear as to what that would mean. Is that correct?
I'm not altogether sure. What we will do, the only thing we can do is reconsult with the neighbours, and we'll see if any further information is submitted. I need to point out as well that this could be an issue where the applicant decides to appeal non-determination, in which case then that matter could be taken out of our hands. But we will hopefully that won't be the case. But we will consult with neighbours again, and we'll see what comes back. But we can only consult under the terms that's allowable to us under the planning regulations. We can't go out to members to the public and ask them for information, because we will be seen as predetermining or could be prejudicing our position. It's up to residents if they wish to submit, or members who wish to submit. But we'll just run the consultation exercise again, and we'll see what comes in and bring it back to members if that's what members vote for. Yeah.
Chair, I see Councillor Boyce's got a question.
Yes, Councillor, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think the point is that, yes, we could determine this now, but if there are material information that hasn't been presented, then I think, you know, it may not change the outcome at all, but it's right for us to, now we know it's there. And I agree, you know, from what Councillor Clark has said, Councillor Nora Clark, that yes, this is a family home. It could be one family moves in that's disruptive, and they wouldn't need planning permission to move into a family with you know, domestic issues there. But you know, we have to do our best for the residents. And if they have evidence that they can submit that might have a material impact, then it's right that they can submit that and we can consider it. It may be that there is no material new information, but we'd have done our job.
Thank you, Councillor Bosie. Councillor Clark, please, to come back in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You know, to be honest, I'm between and betwixt here, because people are, you know, members are saying about information not presented, but we could do that with every application. You know, every application that comes in, we'd have a speaker that says, oh, you haven't got all the information, etc., etc., and we'd just be going round in circles. I think this is rather bizarre myself.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Right. Michael, when you're ready, please.
Well, I think did Hayley want to come in? Sorry, Chair.
Hayley, sorry,
Yes,
I didn't see
Sorry,
that.
Chair, I just wanted to ask, would it provide clarity to the members if the local member or possibly Councillor Blundell, if they know, could clarify what the previous use was, as in how many children were actually being housed at the property, so we could then get a clarity on, as the application is for the proposal of one child, if there were 3 children there previously, then we could get a bit of clarification on the extent of the antisocial behaviour. I don't know if that would help at all to this.
I think that's a good idea, Chair.
It is, yeah. Jonathan, please.
Yes, if anybody wants to come forward with that information, then that would be quite useful in proceedings. I'm not quite sure how we wish to do that, Chair. As I said, there's no planning history associated with this particular plot, but clearly from the representations we've received and the comments from the resident, the local member in this meeting, and yes, there were some activities taking place on this in this property prior to this application being submitted, and I'm not quite sure when that was, or what date or time frame that was, and what the nature of that particular use was. And I know that the resident did explain some of the unfortunate events and circumstances that did arise from that. But how we wish to proceed with that, Chair, if you wish to.
I bring Councillor Smith in now. Charles, have you got any evidence?
If it's in order for me to come
Problems
in,
there.
Chair, since
Can I bring him in?
Sorry, Chair, I think if you want to ask Councillor Smith a question, yes?
When you're ready, please, Charles.
Yes, okay. If it's in order for me to come in, since I was mentioned by Hayley, the point is that Hayley mentioned evidence that she hasn't had. And I think, as John Paul or Councillor Blundell has said, there is evidence out there. I'm not going to provide that evidence this afternoon because I've come unprepared for it, and I don't think it's fair to ask Mr. Cassells to do the same thing. But I do know there's evidence which I think would give some substance to the idea that there's a perception, a realistic perception of fear there. And again, I asked the question of this committee, which I raised earlier on. Are you sure that the issue of previous activity without planning permission has been properly looked into? Because I have perceived, I'm sorry if it's a wrong perception, but I have perceived some vagueness from officers on that this afternoon. Right, if you're talking about, sorry, if you're talking about the
hang on, Charles, please.
Healing and so on, we need to look at planning history in more detail.
Hang on now.
I think we're going back.
When you're ready, please, Rod.
The councillor had his 3 minutes to
more than 3 minutes.
It was just a question.
All the time.
it was just a question about
Right.
evidence. So
Jonathan wants to come back in, I
if
think.
committee makes a decision to defer this, then things can be brought to the officers then. But you know, I think that's all as far as we can go this afternoon in that respect.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rod, for clarifying that. Yeah, as I've indicated, there's no planning history associated with this site. I think we could look to see if there was any enforcement issues raised, whether there was an enforcement complaint. We could look at that again and see what was the result of that. We could also double check the planning history, but as I said, there's no planning application associated with this, but we can check the records again if that's what members require. Just to reiterate, Chair, I think that there is enough information here to determine this application on this basis, but I take on board what Councillor Voisey has said, and that if there is any further information, then that could be considered by the committee, and if it's committee's wish to do that, then I'm quite happy to reconsider that as officers. Yeah.
What? You take the vote first to get it deferred?
Chairman, we've got Councillor Clark indicating.
Nora, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know I haven't been on this committee very long, for a long time, but I always thought that every application is decided on its merits, not what's gone on before, not what's gone on in the in the future. You could be living next to a family that causing disruption. They move out, and another family move in, and they don't cause disruption. So this is how I'm seeing it. This is a totally different. Well, not an application, because there wasn't an application before, and I can understand that probably there was disruption to the neighbours and to the residents of the area. But this is a totally different scenario. We've got one child with 2 care staff. It could be a family moving in. No one knows what that a family that's going to move in, whether they're going to have any problems with them or whatever. I just see this, that we should be deciding it on its merits and not looking for other information.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Right, so on all day, we don't take the vote now.
Yeah, we're going to take a vote, Chair. This will be on deferral to seek further information, as Jonathan has indicated. So if Mike can read out the members' names, please, and then each member should either say for deferral, against, or of course abstain is an option as well, Chair.
Chair, I've had my hand up.
If I can see it, right, hang on. Councillor Watts, please, and then Councillor Sain.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wish to agree with Councillor Nora Clark in this. We should determine this on the application before us, and we must bear in mind that this application clearly states that this is one child who is a vulnerable person, not a person with a history of bad behaviour going into care. This is a vulnerable person, and I think that this application is a totally different matter to that which probably went before. So I just wish to say that, and thank you for bringing me in.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Councillor Sain, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Jonathan has put it very rightly that we need to have some more evidence if it is there. We are not going to say what we'll be doing with this application, but if there is some evidence, let's have it. That's very important, rather than going for a decision without having that evidence.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I got no more speakers. Mike, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read down the list, and if you announce whether you're for, against, or abstain for the deferral. Councillor Altaf Hussain.
For deferral, please.
Councillor Keith Edwards.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Gary Thomas.
Against.
Councillor John Paul Blundell.
For deferral. Thank you, Mike.
Councillor Ken Watts,
Against.
Councillor Matthew Voisey,
For deferral.
Councillor Mike Kern,
For.
Councillor Nora Clark,
Against.
Councillor Richard Collins,
For, Mike, thank you.
and Councillor Ros Sturman.
For deferral, please.
I have that as 6 for and 4 against.
6, yes, 6 for deferral, Chair, and 4 against deferral. So the motion to defer is carried. So this will be deferred till the next meeting of this committee.
Thank you very much.
Chair, before we move on to another item for decision, I realised that I don't think we approved the minutes of the last meeting. So can I take
Could I
you
move
back
up, please, in a second?
to item 3 it is, Chair, on the agenda.
I can see it there now.
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favour?
Yep.
Thank you.
Aye.
Right, we go back to item 7 now.
Thank you, Chair.
Land at Broadlands House, Broadlands, Virgin. Lee, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Lee Evans. I'm Senior Planning Officer. Agenda item 7 seeks full planning permission for the erection of 3 detached houses at land at Broadlands House, which is located on the Broadlands Housing Estate. 3 similar dwellings are proposed on vacant land to the east of Broadlands House and to the west of the residential properties along the orchard. Each property would have 4 bedrooms with associated off-street parking provision and private amenity space. The proposal, following substantial negotiation and discussion with the applicant, includes a vehicle access to the west of the site that links into the cul-de-sac known as Sunhill Park. A pedestrian and cycle link only would be retained to the access lane that exists to the rear of properties along Sunhill Park. Plans and photographs of the scheme are detailed in the report to members, with the scheme being subject to much negotiation and input from the Council's Highways Officer and the Council's Conservation Officer, given the proximity of the development of Broadlands House, a Grade 2 listed building. Members' attention is drawn to the objections raised by the local residents, with the material matters of the principle of the development, visual impact, neighbouring amenity, and highway safety being considered the key issues in this case. In terms of the principle of the development, the application site is situated inside the settlement boundary within a residential locality. The planning history of the site highlights residential development has previously been granted on this site, and the proposed residential use of the site is therefore supported in principle. In terms of visual impact, and noting the siting of the application building close to the listed building, the revised application is considered acceptable in this instance. The site is relatively hidden and screened behind residential properties, and the scheme has gained the full support of the Council's Conservation Officer, with the new dwellings appropriately reflecting the design and appearance of the Georgian listed building. In terms of the impact on neighbouring occupiers, whilst noting the concerns and objections of local residents, given the amendments undertaken to the scheme and subject to the recommended condition, on balance, it is considered an acceptable scheme in this respect. Appropriate offsets and separation distances would be retained between the new development and the nearest residential properties, with the scheme unlikely to raise such serious overbearing, overshadowing or overlooking concerns to warrant the refusal of the planning application in this respect. In terms of highway safety, whilst again noting local residents' concerns, the Council's Highways Officer has raised no objections against the revised planning application subject to the imposition of conditions. Council's Highways Officer has extensively negotiated with the applicant to develop a scheme that is satisfactory in terms of highway safety. In summary, members are advised that with due regard to the planning history of the site, the significant amendments undertaken, and the conditions recommended, the scheme is recommended for approval subject to the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement to provide a financial contribution towards the provision of a children's play equipment and outdoor sports facilities as detailed on page 27 to 29 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I move in a second, please?
I'll move this one, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right. Nora, Councillor Clark, please.
Can I just ask you about the section 106? I notice it's a financial contribution of £3,117. Would that be for a local play equipment? Is there a play area in the locality?
Lee, please.
Thank you, Councillor. There is a children's play area in very close proximity to the site, just to the west on Heol Blandley. So we'd assume that would be used locally to upgrade that facility, would be my presumption on that, Councillor. It would be used locally in the area is what usually tends to happen, subject to discussions with the 106 officer.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I got no more speakers. All in favour of officer's recommendation?
Yes.
Right, anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lee.
Yes.
Moved. Thank you, Chair.
Right, item 8, please. Land up All Saints Way, Penny. Lee, stay where you are, please.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 8 then is a section 73 application that seeks to vary condition 1 of approved planning permission P1777 FUL to amend the previously approved permission for the development of 4 detached houses at land off All Saints Way, Penny. The application effectively seeks to vary condition 1 of the previously approved consent to vary the approved plans to reflect design revisions to the dwelling buildings. The revisions undertaken and proposed in comparison to the earlier approved scheme include the slight resiting of the 2 as-built plots on the site, including the repositioning of the side garages, the removal of the detached garages associated with plots 2 and 3, which have yet to be built on the site, a lowering of the finished floor levels of the most southerly plots, that's plots 2 and 3, and more of a split level design to these dwellings to better integrate with the sloping topography of the site. And this results in a ridge height reduction of approximately 1.37 metres in comparison to the earlier approved scheme. Plans and photographs of the scheme are again detailed in the report to members, with the differences being between the approved scheme and the current submission being fully detailed. The current applications needs to be carefully considered with due regard to all the material planning considerations raised, including the planning history of the site and the approved scheme to develop the site, and with due regard to current policies and guidance. In terms of the principle of the development, the application site remains within the designated settlement boundary, is largely surrounded by residential properties, with the exception of open space to the east of the site, and is considered an appropriate and compatible form of infill residential development that raises no in-principle objections. In terms of the visual impact of the proposal, whilst a number of external changes have been undertaken and are proposed in comparison to the earlier approved scheme, the general visual impact of the scheme remains largely consistent with the earlier approval, in that 4 large detached dwellings are still being proposed on the site in an area that already hosts similar large detached dwellings. The changes between the earlier approved scheme and the current submission are not considered so material or visually harmful to warrant the refusal of the scheme in this respect. Council's Highways Officer and Land Drainage Officer are satisfied with the revised proposal and raise no objections against the scheme. Members' attention is drawn to the objections of the properties along Healthy Close to the south of the site, as detailed within the report, and whilst these do require careful consideration, on balance, the scheme is considered acceptable in residential amenity terms. The revisions to the plot are not considered so materially harmful, particularly in comparison to the earlier approved scheme, to warrant the refusal of the application. The development site is to the north of the objectors' properties along Healthy Close, and appropriate distances would be retained to prevent any adverse overlooking occurring. A recommended condition would also ensure appropriate boundary treatment and landscaping is introduced at the site to further prevent any harmful overlooking issues arising. On balance, the scheme is considered acceptable in terms of its likely impact on the nearest residential properties. In summary, members are advised that when taking a balanced approach to this application, with due regard to the planning history of the site and the conditions recommended, The scheme is recommended for approval subject to a Section 106 agreement as previously agreed for the development in relation to an affordable housing financial contribution as detailed on page 47 to 50 of the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. Well, I've got no speakers. I'm all in favour of officer's recommendation.
Chairman, you need it moved and seconded first, please.
Move the application.
Thank you.
Second.
I'll second the application.
All in favour?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you. Right. Item 9, land adjacent to number 8, Sunnyside, Ogmore Vale. Rodney, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. For the purposes of the recording, my name is Rodri Davis and I'm the Development and Building Control Manager at BCPC. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a pair of semi-detached dwellings on land adjacent to 8 Sunnyside, Ogmore Vale. The application is referred to members to consider the objections received from local residents. The site lies within the settlement development boundary of Ogmore Vale and within the residential area next to other dwellings. Following negotiations with the applicant, the scheme was amended to bring the semi-detached properties more in line with the established building line of the properties to the north and to achieve on-site parking provision to the sides. The development should not have a detrimental impact on the adjoining residential occupiers, and the concerns of the Coal Authority have been resolved. Since the report was compiled, we have received a response from Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water, confirming that they will have no objections to the scheme and reminding the developer that separate SUDS approval will be required for the development with regard to surface water drainage. We have an informative on the recommendation requesting or advising the applicant that that is the case. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rodney. Are we getting speakers, please? I got no speakers. All in favour?
No, I'll move it.
Move, yes, please.
And I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Right. Item 11, please. 76 Norton Street, Bridgend. Stay where you are, Rodney, please.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for the change of use of the vacant ground floor of 76 Norton Street from a shop to a hot food takeaway, specifically in this case as a pizza takeaway. It is proposed to operate the premises between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. each night, and the business will employ 2 full-time and 10 part-time members of staff. The application is referred to 2 members at the request of the local ward member and to consider the objection raised by Bridgend Town Council. More specifically, the local ward members raised a concern that Norton Street has a particularly high number of takeaway premises, which should be considered in the determination of this application. With specific reference to the clustering and over-concentration of hot food takeaways, our supplementary planning guidance note on the matter stipulates that in location category 3 areas such as this one, the local planning authority will seek to prevent developments that would result in new or exacerbate clusters of hot food takeaway establishments which would have an unacceptable and adverse impact on local residential amenity. Between the junctions of Norton Street with Cowbridge Road to the south and with Brackler Street to the north, approximately 10 of the 65 units on either side of the road are hot food takeaway establishments, which roughly equates to around 16% of the units being takeaways along this section of the road. The figure of 16% is not on balance considered to constitute a cluster or an over-concentration of similar uses in one particular area. In addition, a particularly important consideration in this case is the continued effect of an empty, relatively large commercial unit on the vitality and viability of this part of the sub-regional centre of Bridgend. There are a number of other vacant ground floor units in this area, and it is considered that the occupation of this shop unit, albeit as a pizza takeaway, will add to the level of interest and activity at street level. There are no highway-related concerns or neighbouring residential amenity concerns, mainly due to the fact that the opening hours are limited to a closing hours of 9 p.m. as you can see has been controlled by condition. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rod. John Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know what was the idea behind the 9 o'clock, because as someone who has bought a late night pizza every now and then, it's been after 9 o'clock. So I was just wondering why 9 o'clock and not later. Why that stipulation? Thank you, Chair.
When you're ready, Rod, please. Thank you, John.
That's a good question. That's what's been stipulated by the applicant. In areas such as this, I think takeaway premises could open till 1 a.m. In line with our supplementary planning guidance. But in this instance, this is what they've put forward as their preferred opening hours. In actual effect, we've extended it at the start of the day, just in case they would like to cater for that lunchtime market. So we've extended it at the front of the day, which will help, hopefully, if they utilize those hours, can bring a bit more custom and activity, especially at ground floor level on the street scene there, which will be to the benefit of the wider vitality of Norton Street as a whole. So whilst we've retained the end closing hours of the premises as per what they stipulated, we have opened it up at the start of the day to hopefully encourage the opening of this premises earlier in the day to attract more visitors to this area. You're right. I cannot. I'm not aware of myself many pizza takeaways that close at 9 p.m. But they've obviously had a look at what they can provide, perhaps as a service, and perhaps it's related to staff members and availability and how they want to run the business, and that is what they've requested, and that is what we're looking to control via condition. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor.
Right, Councillor Rosy, please, then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was really. I understand the socio-economic impact, and an operating business, employing people, generating footfall is better than an empty, boarded up shop front. Obviously, from my knowledge, I mean, there are lots of takeaways on Norton Street. This will add to the choice, the consumer choice, and its success or failure will be down to consumer. That's not our business in planning. I am interested in the consent and the times, because obviously if that's what they've applied for and we put it as a condition, there's nothing to stop them in the future asking for an amendment to that condition, is there? Because in the past, it seems when we put conditions on, they're actually meaningless, because they can come back and challenge them. And I refer to, once again, the childcare provision in not too far away from here in my ward that I spoke about in the previous application. That a planning inspector might say, well, actually, you can change that condition. So the fact that they applied for that condition in that time, I'm interested. Does that mean that it would be harder for them to justify changing it at a later date? And I do take your point that they could actually ask for 1 o'clock, and and I accept John Paul's comment that it seems an unusual time. So I probably would expect a future application to amend that, but I haven't got a crystal ball, otherwise I'd buy the lottery ticket. But I just like to hear your comments on that.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it's an interesting point. It wouldn't necessarily make it harder for them to apply, because obviously we'd have to assess that on its own merits when that application comes in. It just makes it certain that we will have to receive an application to relax those hours. So at least they'll give us a chance to consider the acceptability of that or otherwise, and take it from there. So the other good thing is with having a condition on there is it's not the fact that they abuse conditions. It's the fact that we've got the potential then of issuing enforcement action in terms of a breach of condition notice if they go beyond those hours. So it's added added scope for us to take enforcement action by putting on that condition. And as you said, it's what they've stipulated themselves. So it would be interesting to see if they do keep to these hours, but that's what we're expecting as it stands at the minute, and then we can enforce against that if they don't. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Have I got a seconder, please? Councillor Moses' amendment.
I think we've got Councillor Clark wants to mention something as well, Chair.
Councillor Clark.
Are you bringing me in, Chair?
Well, wait, Rod.
Sorry, Chair, there wasn't.
Please.
I didn't hear any motion there, Chair, from Councillor Vosey. I don't think anybody's moved and seconded the recommendation yet.
Well, you moved it, didn't he?
Sorry, did you move it, Councillor Vosey, with recommendation?
You still there? Hang on a second, I think we lost him, have we?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Right, we can hear you now, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, there was... Sorry, you see me now as well. Yeah, I moved the original recommendation. I did not have a counter recommendation to the officer's recommendation. I was just asking a question.
So you've moved
Move it now?
Yeah, move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
All right,
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, John Paul. Right, Councillor Clark, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My question is regarding highway safety. I noticed that in the report it mentions there's no detriment to highway safety and that the applicant's site is close to car parks. To be honest, I don't see anybody parking up in a car park to go and fetch their pizza. They're going to park on the road. Aren't there double yellows along Norton Street? And if there are a number of takeaways in that particular area, surely there is a problem with highway safety. Because people are going to park outside the establishment. They're not going to go and park in the Rue car park or Brackla multi-storey car park or Aslet superstore to walk to and pick up their pizza. That's just not going to happen.
Should I bring highways in, Rob, please?
Yeah, no, I'll touch on it. I'll touch on it, and perhaps Rob can add to it. But basically, yeah, that's a good point. It's where do we get to a point where there's too many takeaways and there's likely to be too much demand for on-street parking in this area while they're picking up their takeaways. That's a good point. I don't think we've got to that point yet. And the bonus about Norton Street, it's a one-way system, and there are pull-ins there, and the nature of these uses, they're sort of outside the standard daytime economy of Norton Street or the retail centre. So they're not competing with other uses and shops, etc. in that area, because by that time most of the shops would have been closed. So it's at this point there's sufficient space to accommodate the people wanting to pick up the takeaways, which is human nature. You want to park as close as possible. You won't park in a multi-story and walk down, pick up a takeaway and go back to the multi-story, especially if you have to pay for it. So it's at this minute, due to the nature and characteristics of Norton Street, I think there's sufficient space on there, especially at the later hours of the evening where this establishment will be looking at providing a service at. There'll be sufficient space there for customers. Rob, do you want to add anything?
Please, Rob.
Yeah, for the benefit of the recording, my name's Rob Morgan. I'm the Principal Officer, Highway Development Control. In consultation with our Traffic Management Department over this application and a previous similar application not too far away, the advice was that there are adequate enforceable parking restrictions along Norton Street, and you know this can be dealt with under separate legislation. And you know we've had advice that planning inspectors would look upon it in that way, and it's not something that could be dealt with under planning in this particular instance.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Bowsy, please.
Yeah, as a local member, with the lay-bys and everything along Knowlton Street, and the fact that it's one way, to be perfectly honest, traffic does seem to cope. And if they are coming for a takeaway, they've pre-ordered or whatever, it's in and out. So as the highways officer said, there are measures in place if they park illegally. It's not something, as a local member, we've had a lot of complaints about traffic and the hours of operation of this facility. You're not going to get the kicking out of the pubs time when we're back in full flow issues with congregating people outside this eatery because it's going to be closed at the moment. So it is always a consideration, but I accept the highway officer's comments on that as being genuine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I got no more speakers. Councillor Bowsy, you put your hand back up, or? He's gone. Right. Thank you. All in favour of office recommendation?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Item 12 next, 21 Springfield Avenue, Porthcawl. Rodney, please.
Thank you, Chair. The application proposes front, rear and side dormer extensions to this property. The proposal also involves the removal of an existing terrace area decking structure to be replaced with a new terrace decking structure with access steps this time, as illustrated in the report. The application is referred to members to consider the objections received from local residents, particularly from Hutchins, close to the southeast of the site. The properties to the rear of the application site along Hutchins Close are set at a lower level than the application property, and therefore the views from first floor rear windows of the property effectively look down on the gardens of properties to the rear. As highlighted in the report, there is a distance of 11 metres from the new window in the rear elevation of the proposed first floor extension and the boundary with these properties, and a distance of over 25 metres to the rear elevation and more important.
Who's that there now? Councillor Bowsy?
I think he's on the phone. Yeah.
Somebody
Can you knock the mic up, please?
Yeah, Michael, switch him off.
Yeah.
I think he's got it.
All right, Mike?
Where was it? Done?
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, Rod, you carry on, please.
Right, sorry. Where were they? Yes, and a distance of over 25 metres to the rear elevation, and more importantly, the habitable room windows of these properties, which is well in excess of the council's minimum guidelines. The Juliet balcony has also been removed from the scheme following negotiations with the applicant and agent. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I've got more speakers. All in favour of the office record?
Again,
Rod,
Chair,
please.
if somebody can move in
I'll
second.
move the officer's
I
recommendation.
thought I moved it. Oh, my fault. Right. All in favour of office recommendation with conditions?
Yeah.
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 Thank you very much. I got 30 next. Appeals, please. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of appeal decisions in front of members today. Nothing out of ordinary with the particular decisions, although I'd like to bring to members' attention that one of the appeals for a development in Porthcawl in Hillsborough Place is an unusual split decision. We don't often get to see split decisions, but it is within planning inspectors' remit to approve one part of a development and not approve another part of development. So we have a situation, we have a split decision here where the planning inspector has allowed a single-storey rear extension, but has refused the dormer extension element of the same development. Not a big issue for us because we had no objections as planning authority to the single-storey rear extension But just for members' attention, and just to sort of note that this is slightly unusual decision, but it's perfectly acceptable, and it is within the inspector's gift to do so.
Thank you, Johnson. Is that it, Johnson?
That's it from me, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Unless members got questions. So.
I got one now. John Paul, please.
Yeah, how has that come about, a split decision? It's the first one I've seen since I came on planning. So how does a split decision like that come about?
Well, if you can see, if you see the inspector's appeal letter, she does sort of set out the reasoning in that. There are two distinct elements to the proposal. One was the single-story rear extension, and one was the dormer extension. There were two not interdependent of one another. So therefore, it is within the gift of the inspector to make a decision on both parts or both elements of that scheme. So it doesn't happen very often. I think I've only seen about half a dozen of these in sort of my planning career, but it does happen.
But interestingly, John and members, we can't issue split decisions on applications, apart from the only anomaly is on adverts. So signs, say if you've got a shop front and you like the fascia sign but don't like the projecting sign, you can issue a split decision on adverts, but I think nothing else from us.
Thank you both. All right, Councillor.
Yes, Chair, thank you very much.
Councillor Clark, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to say how pleased I am to see the one for, I think it was 64 West Park Drive, turned down or dismissed by the inspector. Well, I would have been very surprised if that had gone ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, item 12, 21 Springfield Avenue, Porthcawl. Rodney, please.
No, we've done that one. We've done that, Chair, item 12. This is item 14.
14, yeah, all right.
Yeah, and then usually it is me, Chair, presenting a report. This report is about the appointment of a rights of way subcommittee. There is a need, Chair, because of changes to the makeup of the main committee, to reappoint the rights of way subcommittee. And the report, I think, is self-explanatory, and I can go to recommendations, really. The number of members on the rights of way sub has been fixed at 6 members over the years. That seemed to be a perfectly good number, and there's no suggestion that should be changed. And in the past, the members who've made up the rights of way sub, the 6 members, have been 2 Labour members, which is the chair and vice chair of the Development Control Committee, and then 1 Independent Alliance member, 1 Conservative member, 1 Llynfi Independent member, and 1 Plaid Cymru member. So, Chair, today the recommendation is that the committee is again kept at 6, and we're also, on the assumption the chair and the vice chair will be on the committee, Chair, on the subcommittee, we are looking for nominations for the 4 other members for the subcommittee. And that's the report, Chair. Recommendation is item 9 of the report.
Right. Anybody would like to nominate anyone? Right, Councillor Clark, please.
If I could nominate Councillor Caroline Webster for the Independent Alliance, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'll second that.
Right. Anyone else? Councillor Hussain, please.
I can recommend Matthew Wisey, please.
Matthew, accept it?
As I've been so graciously offered it or nominated, then I'd be a fool not to.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Right. Keith, Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, happy to stay on that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Keith. Another one, please. Well, we'll have to wait till the next meeting, Rod, is it?
If there's no nomination,
Mark, is it, Rod?
perhaps Mark can help you now.
I think if I haven't got the report in front of me, Chair, but I think it's the Plaid Cymru member, and I believe there's only one Plaid Cymru on this committee, which is Councillor Radcliffe. So if someone could possibly move and second Councillor Radcliffe, that may be in order.
Anyone? Councillor Spillman, please.
I will. I'll move Councillor Radcliffe.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Chair. If members are happy, those members will go forward to a subcommittee.
Thank you. Right. Item 15, training log. Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Chair. No training this month. However, we scheduled to have a training session on minerals applications and mineral enforcement for the September, before the September meeting. Also, that's not included on there is there was a request to have some training on green infrastructure as well, and we'll aim to do that the meeting after, or certainly before the end of the year. And again, we are open to suggestions from members if there's any particular topics that you want us to cover. We would quite happily accept any suggestions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Clark, is your button stuck?
No, my button's not stuck, Chair. I just wanted to bring up about the minerals training that we'll be having. A number of us had in our diaries for Tuesday gone past. I don't know whether the officers knew that. A number of us obviously logged on, and there was a lot of confusion as to whether it was happening or not. We didn't have a link, so I suppose in a way that would tell us, but it would have been quite nice to have known that it was pulled, and we weren't notified. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Yes,
Would you like to answer that, please?
Yeah, it was brought to my attention, Chair, that the appointment had gone out, but we didn't request that it go out. It may have been something that had been set up some time ago, and that was why it appeared. It's unusual it was there on a Tuesday, but you know there may be valid technical reasons for that. But I apologise if that was put in and members turned up for a meeting that didn't potentially exist. So I think what we will need to do is to liaise very closely with various teams and make sure that when we arrange a training session that it is put into members' calendars as a legitimate meeting, and that's arranged. One of the reasons we couldn't progress with the minerals training this month was because the officer that we employed to do our minerals work was unavailable. He works in Carmarthenshire, and he's taken on extra functions, so he couldn't actually do it this time. But we should be okay for September. So I think perhaps we may have maybe my fault is not to notify members that we weren't going ahead with the August training, and we received a number of apologies as well from members to say that it was peak holiday time, I suppose. So I think it's we took our eye off the ball a little bit there. I apologise if there was any inconvenience to members.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, I got no.
Chair, could I just come back in on that, please?
That button is definitely stuck.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, you go down.
That's very gracious of Jonathan to say that that was his fault. Obviously, it was in the training log on the last development control, and obviously, what I normally do is it goes in my personal diary. So if it doesn't go in my diary, I don't do it. And there were a number of us that were looking to log on that day, and obviously it didn't happen. And I think what must be understood as well is that we gear our day to that training, and I geared my day to that training, and of course it messes you about. But thank you, Jonathan, for taking the blame.
I fully understand. It's happened to me as well, and I, you know, in this culture of working remotely, it's yeah, you do tend to work your day around events, and I apologise for that, and I would hopefully that won't happen again.
Chair, can I come in?
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I don't want Jonathan to take the blame wholly for this because
Why not?
It's partly our blame as well. We had to blame as well in Cabinet Committee. The fact of the matter is it wasn't in the Cabinet Committee calendar. Now, when all appointments for member training and development sessions in the Cabinet are sent to members, we send it normally from Cabinet Committee calendar, so we can then kind of see what's going on for members week to week, like we do at committee meetings. Now, I don't know how it got in there, and it could have been Cabinet Committee, it could have been Jonathan, I don't know, or planning rather, but it wasn't in the Cabinet Committee calendar, and that's why we didn't pick it up either, because if we had, we would have alerted, we would have liaised with Jonathan and his team to see if it was on, etc., and got a note out to members cancelling before it had taken place. So it's our fault as well. Joint blame here.
Thank you, Mark. Rodney, you going to come in?
Sorry, Chair, did you mean me?
No, the other Rod. He was there.
The other Rod. No, I'm fine, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Well, thank you, members. Thanks very much for attending the meeting. You all stay safe and take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you,